The night it all began, I was sitting on the couch, half distracted by a basketball game while Katie was in the other room. The smell hit me first, cologne, strong and unfamiliar. She walked into the living room with that scent clinging to her, not mine, not the one I always wear. My senses were heightened immediately. I didn't say anything, not then, but that smell, it felt like someone else was there, in the room with us, invisible but present. My heartbeat picked up, a cold sweat creeping down my back. I watched her as she sat down next to me, all calm, scrolling through her phone like nothing was wrong. "So, where were you tonight?" I asked, trying to sound casual, though my mind was racing. "Out with Claire. You know, girls' night." Her eyes didn't even leave the screen. She was too relaxed, too confident in that lie. "Yeah?" I leaned in slightly, pretending to be interested in the game. "And did Claire change her cologne recently?" Her fingers froze on the screen for a split second. I caught it. "What are you talking about?" she asked, but now her voice had a different tone, defensive, annoyed, not confused. She knew exactly what I was talking about. I kept my eyes on the game, not giving her the satisfaction of seeing my face, my reaction. "You smell like a man," I said flatly. "Not me. Someone else." Her silence screamed louder than any words. And then she laughed. An empty, forced sound that echoed in the room like nails on a chalkboard. "You're being paranoid again. Why are you always so dramatic?" But this wasn't drama. This wasn't some fleeting insecurity. That scent, that reaction, something inside me snapped. I wasn't about to let this slide like all the other small things I'd been noticing lately. "I'm gonna ask you one more time, Katie. Who were you really with tonight?" My voice was low, steady. She wasn't going to talk her way out of this one. Not tonight. She turned to face me, her eyes cold now, lips curling into a smile that wasn't even remotely close to friendly. "What if I was with someone? What if you can't handle the truth?" That's when I knew. I wasn't dealing with the woman I thought I knew. Something much darker was brewing beneath that pretty face. I stood up, my body tense, heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. Her words hung in the air, daring me to react. She leaned back on the couch, legs crossed like we were discussing the weather. Calm, calculated. I stepped closer, towering over her. "Don't play games with me, Katie. If there's someone else, just say it." She didn't flinch. Instead, she reached for her phone on the table, her fingers casually scrolling again. "Fine. You want to know the truth? Call him." I blinked, unsure if I'd heard right. My mouth went dry. "What?" She smirked, a devilish gleam in her eyes. "Call him. You're always sniffing around for evidence. I'm sure you'd love to hear it from him." Her thumb hovered over the screen, waiting for my reaction. This wasn't just a slip-up. She wanted me to know. "Who the fuck is he?" My voice broke. More rage than question. I could feel my hands shaking, my mind spiraling, trying to piece together the fragments of betrayal she was handing me. "Relax," she said, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. "You've met him before. He's been around." That's when it clicked. All the little moments. Her constant texting. The late-night calls she made sure to answer in the hallway, never near me. The random jokes about her friend at work. The guy at her office party a few months ago. The one she said was just a harmless flirt. Derek. Derek? From your office? Her smile widened like she'd been waiting for me to connect the dots. "Good memory," I snapped. Grabbing her phone from her hand, I scrolled furiously, my vision blurring with rage. Her messages with him were right there, open, shameless. "Miss you. Wish you were here." Photos. God, the photos. Intimate moments she never shared with me anymore. Katie watched me silently, like she was entertained by how easily I was falling apart. "Don't act so surprised," she said, standing up. "You've been boring for months. I didn't owe you loyalty anymore." The cruelty in her voice cut deep, but before I could even think of what to say, my phone buzzed. A message. From Derek. Her touch lingered on my back as she leaned in closer, her lips brushing my ear. "Get him on the phone," she whispered, firm and unshaken. I stared down at the screen in disbelief, my heart pounding in my chest. With trembling hands, I picked up the phone and dialed Derek's number. The words that would follow were bound to leave me utterly stunned. My hands shook as the phone rang, each tone dragging out like an eternity. Katie stood there, her breath warm against my neck, almost daring me to follow through. This wasn't just a confrontation anymore. It was a power play, and she was enjoying every twisted second of it. The ringing stopped. "Hey, man." Derek's voice was casual, oblivious to the storm brewing on my end. He didn't even know it was me calling. Katie must have told him to expect her. My stomach twisted, bile rising in my throat. How many times had they done this behind my back? How long had they been laughing at me? "Derek," I growled, every syllable soaked in anger. There was a pause on the other end, a heavy silence where the realization sunk in. This is... Hold up, is this Matt?" His voice faltered. He wasn't expecting me. Of course he wasn't. I could barely hold it together. "Yeah, it's me. So, Derek, let's skip the bullshit. How long have you been screwing my wife?" Katie watched me with her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. She didn't flinch, didn't try to stop me. She was letting me unravel it, piece by piece, as if this whole scenario was a game to her. My fingers clenched the phone so hard I thought I'd snap it in half. Derek stuttered, trying to find his words. "Look, man, this isn't how—" "Cut the crap," I spat. "You've been fucking my wife, Derek, just admit it." The word echoed in the room, slicing through whatever fake politeness had held us in place. There was no coming back from this. Another pause. And then, finally, he exhaled. Yeah, I guess there's no point lying anymore. It's been a few months." My knees almost buckled. Months. Not days, not weeks. Months. I felt the room closing in, my mind spinning. My world was breaking apart, and here was this idiot on the other end of the phone, just casually admitting it like it was nothing. Katie's smile widened, satisfied with the chaos she had unleashed. I turned to her, my eyes blazing with a rage I could barely contain. "Why?" I whispered, my voice hoarse. "Why the fuck did you do this?" She raised an eyebrow, as if the question was beneath her. "You think you were the only one feeling stuck in this marriage? Please. You've been checked out for ages. I just found someone who actually paid attention." Paid attention. Like that justified it. Like my every effort to keep this marriage afloat wasn't enough. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to lash out in any way I could, but I was paralyzed by the weight of her words, the casual cruelty of it all. Derek's voice crackled through the speaker. "Matt, I didn't mean for this to happen, man. I cut him off. "Shut up. Don't ever call this number again." I hung up, my chest heaving, eyes locked on Katie. She stood there unbothered, as if the damage she'd done was just another moment in her day. And then she laughed, not loud but soft, under her breath, like my pain was amusing to her. "See?" she said, stepping closer. "Now you know. You can stop pretending everything's fine and do something about it. Or don't. I really don't care at this point." I stared at her, barely recognizing the person in front of me. This wasn't the woman I thought I'd married. This was someone else entirely, someone who had no problem setting fire to everything we'd built, and I was trapped in the flames. Katie's laugh echoed in my mind, twisting around the anger that was building inside me. I was numb, My vision blurred, hands clenched into fists so tight my knuckles went white. She stood there, smug, knowing she'd shattered me and not giving a single damn. The casual way she flicked her hair back, how she leaned against the table like this was just another conversation, like I wasn't standing there burning alive. "Why are you laughing?" My voice cracked. The words felt like they were being pulled from the pit of my soul, raw and jagged. "What the hell is funny to you right now?" She shrugged, tilting her head like I was missing something obvious. "Because it's pathetic. Look at you. You're losing your mind over Derek of all people." She chuckled again, that cold, heartless sound. "You're so predictable, Matt." Predictable. That word hit me harder than I expected. She wasn't just betraying me, she was mocking me for even caring, for being blindsided. The fire inside me was raging now, threatening to consume everything. I could feel myself teetering on the edge, one wrong move from exploding completely. "So what's your plan?" I asked, my voice low but laced with venom. "You screw around behind my back for months, and now what? You think I'll just let you keep playing me like this?" Katie's smile didn't falter. She crossed her arms, watching me like she'd already won. "Maybe, maybe not. But the thing is, you've never had the guts to do anything, Matt. You're too nice, too predictable. That's why I had to find someone who could actually make me feel alive." I snapped. I slammed my fist into the wall, the impact shaking the room, a dull ache radiating up my arm, but I didn't care. "Don't you dare try to make this about me!" I growled, my voice trembling with rage. "This isn't about you feeling alive. This is about you being a lying, cheating bitch who didn't have the decency to leave before you fucked around." Her eyes darkened at my words, and for the first time, her smile faded. She stepped closer, her face inches from mine. "You think you're so righteous, huh? Like you're the victim in all of this. But let's be honest, Matt. You stopped trying a long time ago. I just finally got tired of waiting for you to care." I stared at her, stunned. "I cared about you," I said, my voice cracking with disbelief. "I gave everything for this marriage, for us. And you're telling me it wasn't enough because I didn't keep you entertained? That's your excuse?" "Yeah," she hissed, her voice sharp and cutting. "Because I'm done being bored. I'm done with your pathetic attempts to hold on to something that was dead long before Derek came into the picture." Dead. She'd killed it, and now she was throwing it back in my face like I was the one who failed. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of fury and heartbreak, the ground beneath me crumbling. But I wasn't about to let her have the last word. "Then go," I said, stepping back, my voice flat, empty. "Go to him. If that's what you want, then fucking leave. But don't you dare come back crawling when you realize you've burned everything to the ground." For a moment, there was silence. Katie looked at me, almost like she was considering it, weighing her next move. Her eyes narrowed, lips pressed together in a tight line. And then, with a casual flick of her hand, she turned away. "I'm not crawling anywhere, Matt. Not anymore." Katie turned on her heel and started walking towards the door. No hesitation, no second glance. She didn't even take her coat, just grabbed her purse from the counter as if this was a regular night out. My heart raced, everything inside me screaming to stop her. I couldn't let her leave like this. Not like this. "You're really walking out?" I called after her, my voice thick with disbelief. "After everything? Just like that?" She paused, her hand on the doorknob. For a split second, I thought maybe, just maybe, there was some part of her that felt something. Regret, shame, anything human. But then she turned, that same cold smile plastered across her face. "What did you expect, a fucking apology? A tearful goodbye? Grow up, Matt." The venom in her words sent a shockwave through me. She wasn't just leaving. She was making it clear she didn't care about the wreckage she was leaving behind. I could barely breathe, anger and pain twisting together in my chest, suffocating me. "You're unbelievable," I muttered, shaking my head in disbelief. After all the lies, all the betrayal, you're just going to walk out like it meant nothing? Katie's eyes narrowed, and she let out a sigh, like she was tired of explaining something to a child. It meant something for a while, sure, but people change, Matt. You didn't. You stayed stuck. I got bored. That's just life. You'll get over it. My head was spinning. How could she be so casual about it? So detached. Everything we'd built, the years we spent together, and she was reducing it to boredom, like our marriage was a stale TV show she could just switch off. "You're disgusting!" I spat, my voice trembling with rage. "You think this is some kind of game? That you can just toss people aside when you're done with them?" Katie raised an eyebrow, her smile gone now. "Game? Matt, I've been playing by your rules for years. You're the one who refused to see that it was already over. I just stopped pretending." Those words hit me like a freight train. All this time, I thought we were just going through a rough patch, something we could fix if we tried harder. But to her, it had already ended long before Derek, and she never even bothered to tell me. "I hate you," I whispered, more to myself than to her. The words tasted bitter, burning my throat. I had never said that to anyone, especially not to her. But in that moment, I meant it. I hated what she'd done to me. I hated how easily she was walking away. Katie just laughed. "Hate me all you want, Matt. It doesn't change anything. You're still here, alone." With that, she turned back to the door, pulling it open as if the conversation was over. And maybe, for her, it was. But for me, it was only beginning. The fire inside me wasn't cooling. It was growing, blazing hotter by the second. As the door clicked shut behind her, the reality of the situation slammed into me like a tidal wave. The house was silent, the air thick with everything unsaid. She was gone, but the chaos she left behind was just beginning to suffocate me. I grabbed my keys. This wasn't over, not yet. Without thinking, I grabbed my jacket and stormed out of the house, my mind a whirlwind of rage and confusion. The night air was cold, biting at my skin, but I barely felt it. I was fueled by something darker. She couldn't just walk away like that, like I was nothing, like we were nothing. Not after everything she had done. I wasn't going to let her slip away that easily. I scanned the street, and there she was, already halfway down the block, her heels clicking against the pavement with a confidence that made me sick. She hadn't even looked back, not once. My blood boiled. "Katie!" I shouted, my voice cutting through the quiet night. She didn't stop. She kept walking, faster now, her pace picking up. I broke into a run, my footsteps loud and heavy as I closed the distance between us. She heard me coming, but she didn't turn around until I was practically on top of her. Finally, she stopped, whipping around to face me, her eyes narrowed with annoyance. "What the hell do you want, Matt?" she snapped, her voice sharp like a blade. "I thought I made myself clear. We're done." I stopped just a few feet from her, my breath heavy, chest heaving with anger. "You don't get to walk away like this," I said, my voice low but shaking with fury. "You don't just get to blow up our entire life and then leave me in the ashes." She rolled her eyes, crossing her arms as if I was the one being unreasonable. "I already told you, Matt. This was over long before tonight. You're just too blind to see it." "Bullshit!" I shouted, my voice echoing in the empty street. "You didn't even give me a chance. You lied to me for months and now you act like I'm the problem? How the hell is that fair?" "Fair?" she scoffed, laughing under her breath. "Life's not fair, Matt. Grow up. You're not some victim here. We both knew this was falling apart. You just didn't have the balls to face it." My fists clenched at my sides, my nails digging into my palms. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to do anything that would make her see the wreckage she was leaving behind. "I loved you, Katie," I said, my voice raw with desperation. "I gave you everything." She sighed, looking away like she was bored. "Yeah, well, sometimes love isn't enough." Her indifference hit me harder than any insult. I was standing there, broken and bleeding emotionally, while she acted like it was just another Tuesday night. My mind raced, trying to find the words that would break through that cold exterior, but before I could speak, she stepped closer, her face inches from mine. "Listen," she whispered, her voice suddenly soft, almost sinister. "You weren't enough. You never were. That's why I went to Derek. That's why I found someone who could actually make me feel something." I recoiled like she had slapped me. Her words pierced through me, sharp and vicious. This wasn't just about her leaving. This was about her crushing me, making sure I knew just how little I mattered. I had chased her down, hoping for some kind of explanation, maybe even an apology, but all she had for me was cruelty. "You're sick," I muttered, shaking my head in disbelief. "You're a fucking monster." She smirked, her lips curling into that familiar heartless smile. "Maybe, but at least I'm free now." She turned to leave again, and this time I didn't follow. I stood there, rooted to the spot, watching her disappear into the night. There was nothing left to say, nothing left to do. She was gone, and so was everything I thought I knew. As I stood there, watching her vanish down the dark street, a wave of cold realization washed over me. She was really gone. Everything we had built, everything I had believed in, was crumbling in front of me, and she didn't even care. My chest tightened, my mind spiraling with rage and helplessness. I wanted to scream, to run after her, to pull her back and make her understand the destruction she'd caused, but I knew it wouldn't matter. She'd already made her choice. I turned around, stumbling back toward the house, my steps heavy with defeat. Each step felt like a punch to the gut, the pain intensifying with every thought that crashed through my mind. I wasn't enough. I never was. Her words kept repeating, drilling into my skull. The woman I'd loved, trusted, given everything to, had turned into a stranger. No, worse, an enemy. And somehow, I hadn't seen it coming. The house felt colder when I stepped back inside, empty, hollow, like the soul had been ripped out of it. I stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by the remnants of what had once been my life. Our life. The photos on the wall, the stupid little decorations she insisted on buying, the blanket she always wrapped herself in on the couch. Every detail stabbed at me like a reminder of how blind I'd been. I slumped down onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but something heavier was starting to settle in. Sadness. Grief. It hit me all at once, like the weight of everything was finally crashing down, and I couldn't hold it up anymore. My chest ached, my throat tight as I tried to keep it together, but it was no use. How did it get this far? I thought. How did I not see the signs? But deep down, I knew the truth. The signs were there all along. The distance, the late nights, the secrets she barely bothered to hide. I had ignored them, convinced myself it was just a phase, that we could work through it if I just tried harder, if I just loved her more. But love wasn't enough, not when she had already checked out. A loud buzz broke through the silence, snapping me back to reality. My phone. I picked it up, expecting some cruel parting message from Katie, but it wasn't her. It was Derek. I stared at the screen in disbelief. What the hell did he want now? I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the answer button. Everything in me screamed to ignore it, to let him rot in silence, but something inside me clicked. Number I needed answers. I needed to hear it from him. I swiped to answer, pressing the phone to my ear. What the fuck do you want? I snarled, my voice barely contained. I was on the edge, and Derek's voice was about to push me over. There was a pause on the other end. Then, a shaky breath. Matt, man, listen. I didn't mean for it to go down like this. I closed my eyes, feeling the rage build again. You didn't mean for it to happen? You've been sleeping with my wife for months, Derek. Don't pretend you didn't know exactly what you were doing." I know," he stammered, clearly panicking now. "But she told me you two were done, that she was going to leave you. I thought—" "You thought what?" I cut him off, my voice cold. "You thought it would be fine to fuck my wife as long as she said we were having issues. Like that makes you less of a piece of shit?" Silence. He didn't have an answer because there wasn't one. Nothing he could say would make this better. Nothing would erase the fact that he had betrayed me as much as she had. "I'm sorry," he finally muttered, his voice barely audible. "I didn't want it to happen like this." I laughed, bitter and broken. "You didn't want it to happen? You could have said no. You could have walked away. But you didn't. You both chose this." Another silence. Then, quietly, "I'm sorry, Matt. For what it's worth. I never wanted to hurt you." I clenched my teeth, the apology ringing hollow in my ears. It didn't matter anymore. Sorry wasn't going to fix the shattered pieces of my life. Sorry wasn't going to erase the betrayal, the lies, the destruction they'd left behind. "I don't need your apology, Derek," I said, my voice hard and final. "I just need you to stay the hell away from me, and from her." I hung up before he could respond, throwing the phone onto the couch. My heart pounded, my thoughts a tangled mess of anger, hurt, and disbelief. I wasn't sure what came next. All I knew was that this was just the beginning of the fallout. I stared at the phone lying on the couch, my mind racing but stuck in a loop of fury. Derek's voice still echoed in my ears, his pathetic apology doing nothing to dampen the flames raging inside me. Every part of me wanted to destroy something, to rip through the walls, to make someone else feel the same pain I was drowning in. But I didn't move. I couldn't. The rage was burning too hot, paralyzing me. I felt like I was going to explode, but there was nowhere for the energy to go. So I just sat there motionless, my mind unraveling with every passing second. What was I supposed to do now? Divorce was the obvious answer. But it felt too clean, too easy. This wasn't just a marriage falling apart. This was betrayal on a level I never imagined. And the worst part, she didn't even care. Katie had looked me in the eyes, laughed at my pain, and then walked out without a second thought. She wasn't coming back. Not for me, not for this marriage, not for anything we had built. The house felt haunted now. Every corner, every piece of furniture, every little knick-knack she'd insisted on buying, it all felt tainted. It was like she had left a part of herself in every inch of this place, and now those pieces were poisoning everything. I needed to get out. I needed air, space, something that wasn't tied to her. Without thinking, I grabbed my keys again and headed for the door, slamming it behind me. I drove aimlessly for a while, the streets blurring together as I tried to think of anything other than Katie and Derek. But no matter where I turned, they were there. In every red light, every passing car, every song on the radio, I wanted to scream, but I just gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles white, my jaw clenched. I ended up at a bar, not one we used to go to together, just some dive on the edge of town where nobody would know me. I needed to disappear for a while, to drown out the noise in my head. I ordered a whiskey, downed it in one gulp, and signaled for another. The burn was sharp, but it was nothing compared to the fire inside me. Hours passed in a haze of drinks and thoughts I couldn't quiet. People came and went. Laughter filled the room. But I was stuck in my own spiral. I kept replaying that moment, the way Katie had stood there, taunting me, daring me to feel more, to hurt more. And Derek's voice, "I didn't want to hurt you." What a load of shit. They both wanted this. They both thrived on it. And I had been the idiot, standing there, letting it all happen. At some point, I lost track of how many drinks I'd had. My phone buzzed, but I didn't care enough to check it. Probably some automated message from work or a spam call, but it kept buzzing, and eventually I glanced down. It wasn't spam. It was Katie. My blood went cold as her name flashed across the screen. For a second, I thought I was imagining it. Maybe the alcohol was messing with my head. But there it was. Her name. Her number. She was calling me. I stared at the phone, heart pounding, unsure whether to answer. What the hell could she want now? To rub salt in the wound? To make another excuse? Maybe Derek had bailed on her, and now she was crawling back, looking for some kind of twisted redemption. The phone buzzed again in my hand. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips as I hit answer. "What do you want?" I barked into the phone, not bothering to mask the venom in my voice. There was a pause on the other end, just enough to make me think she'd hung up. But then her voice came through, shaky, almost nervous. "Matt, I need to talk to you." I nearly laughed out loud. Now she wanted to talk? After everything? "You've got some nerve calling me," I said, my voice cold. "What the hell do you want to talk about? You've already said everything that matters." Her voice cracked slightly, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, she sounded vulnerable. "It's not about us. It's about Derek." That name again. I gritted my teeth, gripping the phone tighter. "I don't give a shit about Derek." "No, Matt, listen to me," she said, her tone more urgent now. "There's something I need to tell you. It's not what you think." I sat up straighter, the fog of alcohol starting to lift as her words sank in. Not what I think? After everything I'd heard, after the confessions and the lies, what could possibly make a difference now? "What are you talking about?" I demanded, my heart racing again. Katie hesitated, her voice low and strained. "Just meet me. Please, there's something you need to know." Every part of me screamed to hang up, to shut her out for good. But there was something in her voice, fear maybe, that pulled me back in. Against my better judgment, I found myself agreeing. "Fine," I muttered, my voice tight with anger. "But this better be good." As I hung up, my mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. Whatever she had to say, it was bound to rip open wounds that hadn't even begun to heal. I pulled into the parking lot of a small, dimly lit diner on the outskirts of town. It was the kind of place where no one asked questions, where people came to disappear for a while. Katie had chosen it for a reason. The neon sign flickered above, casting an eerie glow over the lot, and my stomach churned with a mix of dread and anger. I wasn't sure why I was even here, why I agreed to this, but some part of me needed to see what else she could possibly have to say. I spotted her sitting inside by the window, looking almost fragile. She was nursing a cup of coffee, her hair pulled back, none of that smug confidence she'd flaunted earlier. It was strange to see her like this, and for a split second, I wondered if she was truly shaken. But then the image of her laughing in my face earlier tonight snapped back into my head, and the fury returned. I walked in, the bell above the door ringing as I approached her table. She didn't look up until I sat down across from her, my body tense, ready for whatever new game she was about to play. "What is it, Katie? I'm not in the mood for more of your bullshit," I said, my voice sharp, cutting through the silence. She flinched slightly, then took a deep breath, her hands wrapped around the coffee cup like she was holding on for dear life. "Matt, this isn't easy for me to say," she began, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. I rolled my eyes, leaning back in my seat. "Spare me the drama. Just get to the point." She hesitated, her eyes flicking around the diner, as if checking to see if anyone else was listening. Then she leaned forward, lowering her voice even more. "Derek, he's not who you think he is." I frowned, confused. "What the hell are you talking about? I already know everything I need to know. He's a cheating scumbag who's been screwing my wife behind my back. What else is there?" Katie shook her head, her expression tight with worry. "No, it's more than that. He's dangerous, Matt. You don't know him like I do." I stared at her, trying to read her face. Was this another trick? Some new angle to manipulate me? "Dangerous?" I repeated, my voice laced with skepticism. What, are you trying to make him the villain now so I'll feel sorry for you? It's not gonna work. She looked desperate now, her eyes wide. I'm serious. You think this is just some affair? But it's more than that. He's been threatening me, controlling me. I tried to break it off weeks ago, but he won't let me. I blinked, caught off guard by the sudden shift in tone. This wasn't the Katie I knew. This wasn't the same woman who had laughed in my face, taunted me with her infidelity. She looked scared. But how could that be? None of this made sense. Why the hell should I believe anything you say? I snapped. You've been lying to me for months. How do I know this isn't just another lie to cover your ass? Katie's eyes darted toward the window, like she was afraid someone was watching. She leaned in even closer, her voice barely a whisper now. Because I didn't want this to happen. I didn't want any of it. Derek, he's been blackmailing me. He has things on me, Matt. Things I can't let get out. My heart pounded in my chest, confusion and anger mixing in a chaotic swirl. Blackmail? What the hell are you talking about? What could he possibly have on you? She bit her lip, her hands trembling as she finally met my eyes. I did some things before we got married. Stupid things. I thought they were long buried, but he found out. And now he's using them to control me. I tried to leave, but he said he'd ruin me, ruin both of us. I stared at her, my mind reeling. Was she telling the truth? Or was this some elaborate story to manipulate me into feeling sorry for her? But the fear in her eyes, the way her voice shook, it felt real, and that terrified me even more. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice quieter now, the anger slowly being replaced by a gnawing sense of dread. I was ashamed, she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. And I didn't know how to stop him. I thought I could handle it on my own, but it spiraled out of control. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to process everything she was saying. If Derek really was threatening her, if he was controlling her, what did that mean for me? For us? I didn't know how to feel, didn't know if I should be angry, sympathetic, or terrified. So, what now? I asked, my voice strained. What do you expect me to do? Katie looked at me, her eyes pleading. I don't know, I need help, Matt. I can't do this alone. I stared at her, my mind torn between the betrayal and the possibility that she was in real danger. This wasn't the confrontation I had expected. This was something darker, more twisted than I ever could have imagined. And suddenly I realized I wasn't just dealing with a broken marriage. I was dealing with something far more sinister, far more. Katie's words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. My entire world had already shattered, and now she was telling me it was worse than I'd ever imagined. I stared at her, my mind struggling to process the fear in her eyes. Could this really be happening? Could Derek, the same man who had torn my life apart, now be a threat in ways I couldn't even begin to comprehend? I leaned back in my seat, the weight of everything pressing down on me. So let me get this straight, I said slowly, trying to wrap my head around it. You're saying Derek's been blackmailing you for months, threatening to ruin your life, and you just went along with it? Slept with him? Lied to me? You didn't think there was any other way out? Katie wiped at her eyes, her voice shaking. I know how it sounds, Matt, but I was scared. He has connections. He could destroy my career, our finances, even you. I thought if I just played along, kept him happy, he'd eventually back off. But he never did. He just kept tightening the leash. I shook my head, still trying to decide if this was another one of her manipulations, or if I had genuinely missed the signs of something more sinister all along. You should have come to me, from the start. Her face softened, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw a glimpse of the Katie I used to love, the one who wasn't full of lies and deceit. I didn't want to drag you into it, I thought I could fix it on my own. I let out a bitter laugh. Fix it? You didn't fix anything, Katie. You let him tear us apart. I rubbed my temples, trying to focus. Why are you telling me this now? What changed? She hesitated, her hands trembling. He's losing control, he's getting desperate. And now, I think he's watching you. He knows you're starting to figure things out. My blood ran cold. Watching me? What do you mean? Katie's eyes flicked toward the window and she lowered her voice. I've seen his car outside our house, Matt. He knows I came clean to you. I'm scared he's going to do something. I felt my stomach twist. Suddenly, it wasn't just about a marriage crumbling. It was about something much darker, much more dangerous. If Derek was truly this unhinged, if he was capable of blackmailing and stalking her, then I couldn't just walk away from this mess. Not yet. We need to go to the police, I said, my voice firm. If what you're saying is true, if he's threatening you, then this isn't something we can handle on our own. Katie shook her head frantically. No, Matt, you don't understand. He has dirt on everyone. He'll bury us if we go to the police. He'll make sure we lose everything. So what, Katie? I shot back, my voice rising. You want us to just sit here and wait for him to show up on our doorstep? You want to keep playing this twisted game? Her eyes filled with panic. I don't know. I don't know what to do anymore. She was unraveling in front of me. All the bravado she had shown earlier stripped away, leaving only fear. I stood up, pacing, my mind racing. The rage I'd felt earlier was still there, but now it was laced with a deep sense of unease. This was bigger than our broken marriage. This was about survival. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. I pulled it out, expecting another message from Derek or a call from some unknown number. But it wasn't either of those. It was a photo from an anonymous number. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. The photo was of our house, taken just a few minutes ago. From the angle, it looked like someone was sitting outside watching. The caption read, "We should talk." Face to face, Katie glanced at the phone, her face draining of color. "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "He's here." I felt a surge of adrenaline, my pulse racing. This was no longer just about confronting betrayal. This was about protecting ourselves from whatever Derek had planned next. I grabbed my jacket, my mind racing with 1,000 possibilities. "We're leaving, now!" Katie stood up quickly, panic written all over her face. "Where are we going?" I didn't know. But one thing was clear. We couldn't stay here. Not with Derek lurking in the shadows, pulling strings from the dark. "Anywhere but here," I said, grabbing her arm and pulling her toward the door. As we stepped outside into the cold night, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The walls were closing in, and the game had just gotten a lot more dangerous. But this time, I wasn't playing by anyone's rules. Not Derek's, not Katie's, not anyone's. It was time to take control. And whatever was waiting for us out there, I was ready to face it head on.